Hello. In a previous video, I showed you how I had improved Super Nintendo performance on my Pocket Go 1. After posting the video, I was made aware of an alternate emulator available called DrPocketSNES. This emulator aims to improve SNES performance greatly, and from what comments were saying, is able to play many games at full speed with no drawbacks. In this video, I'm going to show you how I installed this version of DrPocketSNES, a file called snesadvance.dat, and what performance is like in this new emulator. To install the emulator, I found a link to its Dropbox page on the Dingunity forums. There, I downloaded the Pocket SNES folder. I take the SD card from my Pocket Go and plug it into my computer. Before I replace the old files with new ones, I'm going to make a backup of this folder's contents so that if I want to go back to the old version, I can easily do so. After making the backup, I opened the Pocket SNES zip I downloaded. Inside there was a folder called Pocket SNES, which contains all the files of the new emulator. I drag and dropped the Pocket SNES folder to the one on my SD card, under Emu's Pocket SNES, to replace the old contents with the new ones. With the contents replaced, the emulator should now be using the DrPocketSNES version. The next step I take is to add in a file called snesadvance.dat. The emulator will check if the game you're playing is on this file and will apply additional changes to help the game run better. I found this file within SNES 9X TYL, a Super Nintendo emulator for PSP. I could either download the whole repository under the green code button and download it as a zip, or I could go to the snesadvance.dat file under data and save the raw version of the page as snesadvance.dat. With the DAT file, I place it within the same Pocket SNES folder under Emu's Pocket SNES. With the new emulator installed and the snesadvance.dat file in place, I can now try the new emulator and see what kind of performance I get with it. I'm running these games at their default settings. This is full screen Super Mario Bros. 1, and I'm running at full speed 60 FPS. The first thing I notice is that the audio sounds off. It sounds higher pitched and also more crunched compared to the SNES 9X emulator. It's running at the highest audio sample rate, so I think it's an issue with the emulator. It doesn't sound too bad here, but other games I tried had worse audio. Here, Mega Man X1 also runs at pretty much full speed, but the audio still sounds a little off. The bass doesn't have as much punch as it should have. It sounds like only the higher pitched audio is getting passed through. As a side note, I had no idea you could get crushed here. Here in A Link to the Past, the poor audio quality is more noticeable. You can hear how much more crunched the audio is. Here in the intro sequence, the rain sounds like static. Compared to SNES 9X, the transparency effects render properly, which means we can see everything on screen as intended. Right now we're hovering around 50 to 55 FPS. Here in Kirby's Dream Land 3, this game uses the SA1 enhancement chip, which made it a little bit harder to emulate compared to other games, but here we're running at a better frame rate compared to SNES 9X. It's not quite running at full speed, there is some slowdown, but it is running a lot better than it was before. The audio quality doesn't sound too bad in this one, but there are stutters you may be able to hear. Here in this clip I experimented with auto frame skip to see if that would help with performance, but it ended up freezing the game constantly. Donkey Kong Country's 2 audio is really bad in this emulator. You can hear it struggle trying to emulate the bass properly. Despite the poor audio quality, the game runs at pretty much full speed. Here in F-Zero, the engines are only a little deafening. F-Zero runs at around 50 FPS, but the audio still has that stuttering issue. Here I experimented with a frame skip of 1 to see if that would help any audio issues. And then here I turned on auto frame skip to see what that would be like. Super Metroid runs really well, and because we have transparency effects enabled, we can see that blue lighting here in this intro section. The alarm in the background still sounds really crunched though. Here the transparency effects in the rain are working properly, whereas in SNES 9X, transparency off meant that this was just a grid of static. Super Mario Kart is running at a better frame rate, but the audio stuttering issue is still present. In this clip I turned on auto frame skip to see if that would help with the audio issue. Now I'm running at about 40 FPS, but the audio seems to sound better. I wanted to test out Super Mario RPG to see how the emulator would handle it, but it ended up crashing on me in the intro, so yeah. I thought it was only a software crash at first, but it turns out it crashed the entire system. I had to force the shut off to get the system out of this. Yoshi's Island is running at a pretty playable speed, considering how intensive the game is to run. I'm not using frame skip here, so it is running at a slower speed because of that. Not a bad speed, but not full speed either. Here I turned on auto frame skip to see if that would help with the game speed, and it does, but now the frame rate is choppier. Now that I've shown you how games perform on this emulator, what are my thoughts about it? On one hand, I think playing these games at better frame rates are the biggest selling point of using this emulator over SNES 9X. It allows for running more intensive Super Nintendo games on these budget devices and improving performance overall. However, there are two big negatives that come with using this emulator. Number one is the audio quality. Even at the highest sample rate, I don't know why the audio sounds so bad. To me, the audio sounds worse than SNES 9X when using the 1600 sample rate. The second big drawback with this emulator is broken save functionality. I was not able to save a game properly when using it. I tested it with the save file in Super Mario All-Stars, and when I restarted the emulator to try loading into it, it didn't exist. Save states don't work either. I saw a comment on a different video that said that saving does work if you're doing it on a Powkiddy V90, but because I don't have a V90, I can't verify if that's true or not. The last update on this emulator I could find was from February of this year, and there hasn't been any development on fixes for these problems as a result. When using this emulator over SNES 9X, it's going to be a matter of how much you really want the performance. Personally, I'm going to stick with using SNES 9X and roll back to the previous version of Pocket SNES that I had before using the DrPocketSNES version. I do hope that more work on this emulator gets done in the future because the potential to have this be the definitive SNES emulator for Miyoo CFW capable devices is definitely there. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments. If not, have a nice day. Thank you for watching.